So here's what I've got for the barrel of this hinge that holds the forward pistol grip on. It's a length of 1-inch dowel with some EVA foam super glued onto each end and then filled with super glue to try to give it some kind of rigidity that I could sand. And I'm really not happy with it. It just kind of crumbles and dents super easy. So I'm going to revisit this time still with a 1-inch dowel, but instead of foam, I'll use this 1/8-inch ABS plastic. I just have to drill some holes and then cut a ring out around that, glue it on, fill in the seam, and maybe fill the ends with epoxy just to cover up the wood grain of the dowel. Okay, I've got 2 3/4-inch holes drilled in there. Those are going to get circles drawn around them. Those are going to get cut out with my jeweler's saw. That glues onto that. To make sure that gets centered, I'm going to find the center of this dowel. Now I can get that close to center. Now I just have to sand these edges flush, probably fill the crack in between there, and then lay some epoxy in the middle. I've got this piece about finished, and I put a few coats of crystal clear on it. Now I'm going to bore this hole out to 3/8 so I can put this peg in there. And then that peg will sit in the grip and hopefully make it a little stronger. A little bit more. About another millimeter. There it goes. I just realized that when I drilled the hole for that eye bolt, I didn't center it. At least I didn't mean to, but it actually came out quite centered. So that's a happy accident. For the rear sight, I'm going to use more of this ABS plastic. This is going to make up the rear posts to give it some rigidity, and then the body of it will be filled in with foam. But this is not quite thick enough for these parts, so I'm going to glue 2 of these together to make it thicker. Now I want to make sure that these edges that I just snapped are not standing up at all. That'll keep them from gluing perfectly flat. Can you glue ABS plastic with contact cement? We're about to find out. And that should be stuck together. Now I'm going to sand this. Now I'm going to sand this texture off. All right, I did most of it on the belt sander. Now I'm just taking it down to 800 with a little wet dry paper. Yeah, all right. Watch this. ABS cuts beautifully with a jeweler's saw. Well, when it doesn't get gummed up. Uh-oh. To make this go a little bit quicker, we're going to stick these together. And then we'll just have to cut one out. All right, that's cutting too slow. So I'm just gonna grind it down on the bench sander. Now we pop these apart and we've got two identical pieces with tape stuck to one. So now I'm gonna put foam between them. About like that, and that should be a good thickness. I think that'll be good. One of these is going to get sandwiched in between the ABS pieces. The other two will make up the outside. Oh, whoa. Ah! Pen freaking exploded. The top of the sight mount has this rail on it that looks like a mill standard 1913 rail. So I wanted to use a section of this mill standard 1913 rail that I have. Unfortunately, it needs to be 1 inch wide. And 1913 rails are not 1 inch wide. So I'm going to have to make a rail. I'll use more of this ABS plastic sheet because it's pretty nice to work with, and I don't want this little unsupported end to droop. You know, I'm gonna take a shortcut. Make this 1 inch. Just draw my line with it. This stuff can just be scored and then snapped. Pretty easy to work with. Now, it snaps right off of there. I said it snaps right off of there. There. Christ. I think I'm gonna add another layer. So I want this to be reinforced, so I'm making it double thick, and what's left over will also give me the pieces for the rail teeth. So when making the rear sight for this, I found out that this acts a lot like the foam floor mats. If I sand off this texture and stick them together, I'll get double thickness and no seam. So that's going to be the next step. Okay, we've got our double thick, inch wide bar stock of ABS plastic. I'm gonna chop it off at 6.5 inches. Where did my papers go? There they are. Chop that off at about, we'll make it 6 1/4, 6 3/8. We'll use the rest for the teeth on here. All right, let's cut it. So I want to get as many of these out of here as I can, and we're going to call them about that big. And we'll just start scoring this. 1.3, 1 at 0.6. This is also easier math to do than some crazy decimal. I'm actually getting kind of a lot out of this. 2.1. All right, I'll cut these out. We're about halfway there. Need more double thick stuff. So I will make more double thick stuff. So this is going to get sanded down. All the sides and all the tops will be sanded nice and flush and even. There we are, all cleaned up and trued up. All I gotta do now is knock down some of these corners on the sander and it'll be done. Yeah, it's pretty rigid. I mean, it's more rigid than it has to be. The foam will flex more than the actual piece, so mission accomplished.